Let's talk about Jordan Burch. Jordan Burch was awesome for 2 years with the Ducks. John has a question, and you can submit questions too. YouTube comments, Twitter. You can become a Locked On Ducks insider. Always to get into the mailbag. That link is in the description below. John says, question. No one is really talking about who is taking Burch's snaps and role. John. I'm talking about it right now, obviously. I think Mateo moves to that defensive end swing role, move all over the line like Dorless and Burch. That's what he did when Burch was injured last year. Purchase and rushing take Mateo's snaps at edge. Breland is going to be groomed at defensive end next year when Mateo leaves. How do you think it plays out? Breland is built to be an interior defensive lineman and a darn good one. Aiden Breland, that is. And I think Breland sees legit snaps this year on the defensive line for Oregon and makes some impact plays. I think Aiden Breland this year is Amari Washington last year. Washington was the clear number 3 defensive tackle, and he was the third most snapped. He was the third most productive. But when you think back to last season, are you glad Amari Washington was there? I am. I'm certainly glad Amari Washington's there this year because I am chair of the Amari Washington fan club, of course. A fact I remind you all of far too often. No, there's no such thing. I can't remind you too often of that. So I do wonder about this because Jordan Burch didn't stand up a ton last year. Mateo stands up more. It depends on, what kind of package they're running defensively. But I think Teitum Tuioti the guy that takes Burch's spot primarily. What I love about this defensive line, why I have long said it is the best unit that Oregon has going into this 2025 season, which starts in 26 days. We are 26 days from having a new Oregon football game to talk about. That's wild. It's wild and crazy and awesome, and I can't believe it. It's so great. So I think that your first 4 along the defensive line. Now, is Mateo built exactly like Jordan Burch? No. Nobody is. Even Mateo isn't, right? And Teitum Tuioti is not either. I think I just said Mateo in there twice. I meant to say Teitum Tuioti is not built like Jordan Burch. Neither is Mateo. Mateo's not quite as heavy. He's as tall as Jordan Burch, but he doesn't have the physique. So I do think that you can move Mateo inside. And, the biggest area I saw a podcast recently, someone talking about Mateo Uyunglele needing to get better against the run. I think that's true. I think Mateo's aware of that. He talked about it at Big Ten Media Days recently in Las Vegas. So I think the first 4 that go out there against Montana State, Mateo's at an edge, Bear Alexander's a defensive tackle, Amari Washington a defensive tackle, and Teitum Tuioti on the other side. I do think, to your point, you're going to see a solid amount of Elijah Rushing, Blake Purchase, maybe Ashton Porter. Ashton Porter could be a guy that's getting slept on here. Toby Hastrup a freshman, was getting some a real love from, I think it was Tosh Lupoi, not long ago after a recent practice here as Oregon's gotten that back up and going again. So I think Tuioti's the most likely guy. But, it speaks to how, coaches have to evaluate and tinker every single offseason, because you can put a guy in Jordan Burch's position, but there is no Jordan Burch. You don't have a guy that is 6'5", 290, and you could snap a ball to on a fake punt and he'll run for 50 yards. Believe it or not, this may surprise you, they don't make a lot of guys like that. Burch was very unique. The other thing that I'm curious to see how it plays out from a pure production standpoint, Burch made a lot of impact plays against the pass and against the run. I actually felt like he was kind of equal in those two areas, where he made some splash plays against the run, and he also had sequences where he was incredibly disruptive for another team's passing game. Mateo's probably best run play to date, or one of them, was against Ohio State on that 3rd and short, again, when Travion Henderson, right before the half, Ohio State was driving, they handed it, and Mateo he needs to make more plays like that if he wants to seriously elevate his draft stock. I've heard that his draft stock is not as high as it once was. I don't really know how everybody talked themselves into that, but it's the offseason. That sort of thing can happen. So I think you'll see legitimately up to 8 guys rotating, maybe even 9, rotating in regularly. Now, some guys are going to be snapped more than others. Let's not get that misconstrued. But I think they'll be back to 4 interior defensive linemen, whereas last year they were just 3, because I think they had a lot of guys that were a year away, that maybe weren't quite ready as true freshmen. And Dan's talked about that before, that playing in the offensive or defensive line areas is pretty challenging as a true freshman. So I think Elijah Rushing could be in there. I think your kind of NASCAR speed package for pass rushing situations could see Mateo and Teitum slide inside, and then you put Rushing and Purchase on the field with Teitum Tuioti. Could be a quicker sort of group, but I wouldn't sleep on Ashton Porter. I think Ashton Porter, a guy who's going into his 3rd year, could have a decent size role. I don't think a huge role, maybe like a Marion Winston type. I think that could be Ashton Porter this year. Kyler sends this one in. A take for SSA. That's Spencer's scale of agreement, if you didn't know. If Dante Moore never went to UCLA and stayed committed to Oregon, we'd be the most hyped team this offseason. Ooh. If Moore didn't have bad freshman film, everyone say that after 3 years of elite quarterback production, Dan Lanning finally had his guy that sat the last 3 years to learn from the 2 most experienced quarterbacks in college football history. Everyone would be pro Dante Moore. He'd be top 3 in Heisman odds. Well, as it stands, I'm pretty sure he's top 10 in Heisman odds, according to our friends at FanDuel. Let me double check that real quick. He is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's 11th in Heisman odds right now. So he's not like way outside or completely out of the conversation, off the radar, off the reservation and whatnot. So he only would have had 2 years, first of all. I agree that some folks, like our Locked On USC host, has mentioned that every chance he gets in the squad show. Some of you may have mentioned that. 11-9 touchdown interception ratio. Why are we getting excited or expecting anything of this guy? True. I initially had the thought, he could have more Arch Manning, but Arch has actually made a couple of starts and looked really, really good, and Dante hasn't. And it is a completely different situation. Of course, I don't think the UCLA team he was on was a disaster. I think the O-line was really bad. I don't think everything else around him was really bad. I think his play caller was good. I think his receivers were solid. His running game was good. I think it's better now at Oregon, but it wasn't, a complete and abject mess. The most hyped team this offseason? No, I don't think so, because there'd still be that element of unknown, which I think is a fair question to ask. Like, you can put all the talent and potential on paper that you want, but if you haven't actually seen it translate to results on the field, I lean towards proven production. It's why among my favorite teams to win the national championship this year are Penn State and Clemson, who are bringing back almost their same team from a year ago and their veteran quarterbacks. So the most hyped team, I'll give that a 3. Because I think that, Schrodinger's cat element of like, we don't really know until you open the box. Well, the box is going to get open or start cracking open here in 26 days, which is exciting. But most hyped team, I don't think they'd be there. I do think nationally, though, Oregon is getting the level of respect it deserves, and that's a great thing to see.